People so often get surprised how long victims of narcissistic abuse stay in the relationship, even though it's clear from an outsider's perspective how abusive the relationship is and how bad it is for the target. And the reason that people, and this usually happens before they're aware of the NPD disorder and before they understand about narcissism, but the reason people stay in such relationships well past the due date is because what the narcissist does is that they slowly but steadily weaken the target, weaken their partner in the romantic relationship, such that when the partner starts to realize that they're dealing with somebody who's not mentally healthy, who's toxic, they don't really have the strength to depart from the relationship. So narcissists will steadily weaken the target. For example, they will constantly belittle the person, constantly take those kind of jabs at the person's self-esteem, constantly giving those kind of backhanded compliments. They do it in such a way where it's very subtle, and the target doesn't realize that this is all part of the narcissist's way of taking somebody's morale down. But in effect, what is happening is the narcissist steadily chips away at the person's self-esteem, their confidence, their kind of independence of mind. They do it so craftfully that the person doesn't realize what's happening until they find themselves in a situation where they've pretty much lost all their confidence. They've pretty much lost their self-esteem. Their energies are at an all-time low, and they find it difficult to recuperate and recalibrate their energies. Because the narcissist will always give another dose of a take you down to the target, so that the target never really has time to recover from the previous doses of toxicity that the narcissist has given them. So the narcissist keeps the target in this regular state of submission, in this regular state of just being unable to think for themselves, to be unable to uplift themselves. And all of that really does deplete the target and makes the target feel like they can't really get on their own anymore. They find themselves becoming ever more dependent on the narcissist, and that's what the narcissist wants. The more they can chronically depress the mood of the target, the more they can chronically depress the person's self-esteem, confidence, and energies, the person not only feels down, but they also don't feel like they have the resources to uplift themselves. They don't feel like they have the resources to step away if they wish. So, but what happens is when the target realizes that they're dealing with somebody who's not healthy for them, who's caused a lot of harm to them, they're usually in this state already of being very kind of depressed emotionally, very dependent on the narcissist because the narcissist created that dependency. And in addition to that, something else the narcissist would have done, and they're very good at this, is isolating their targets from their support group of people. Because the narcissist sees their spouses or their other half's support group of people, whether it be family, good friends, the narcissist sees those people as a threat. So while the narcissist is putting the person down, they're also tactfully pushing the person away from their support group of people, so that when it does reach the point where the target realizes they're dealing with a toxic person and the narcissist, not only are they weakened, feeling ever more dependent on the narcissist, not knowing how to pick up their bags and go, but in addition to all that, they don't have the external help that maybe they would have had 6 months, 12 months, 2, 3, 4 years ago. Because over the course of the months, years, sometimes even decades, the narcissist would have pushed the person against the support group. So when you think how they weaken the targets, how they isolate the targets, and then how the target just feels so dependent on the narcissist, you can see how it's very difficult for them to pick up their bags and go. Oftentimes, they're dependent on the narcissist on so many levels. It be it emotionally, financially, maybe, in other ways too. They just don't really feel like they can live in an independent way anymore. And that's the narcissist's objective, is to take away the person's independence of mind, independence of thought, free will, and their ability just to carry on their own life. The narcissist tries to take that all away and replace that with someone being in a state of submission, who's there to serve the narcissist, and who's there not to pose any threats to the narcissist. And then the narcissist achieves all that by weakening the person. So just kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, people so often feel surprised that people, targets of abuse, will stay in the abusive relationship for so long. But if you think about it, it makes sense, because if the target doesn't know what they were dealing with, if they don't know that such people walk this earth, people who have this disorder, people who behave like narcissists do, if they're unaware of that, but they find themselves in the predicament where they're under the influence of that person heavily, you can see how people just end up staying years, sometimes decades longer than they should in relationships, until they realize what they were dealing with. When they start to understand what they were dealing with and that they can do better, then they oftentimes would start taking those baby steps in the direction of what will eventually become their independence. But without that understanding and knowledge, it's just that dissonance, that confusion, coupled with just feeling weakened on so many fronts. The people, the targets, just don't really feel like they have the ability to go anywhere, at least for many, many years past the due date. So it's not always that the person wants to put up with abuse or that they tolerate narcissistic behavior per se. It's just they don't understand what they're dealing with. And once they do, then things typically start to shift in a slightly different direction, but that can often take a long time.